Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. You know me as Sam. Today, I'm joined by someone who is really one of the most brave and courageous men you're ever going to have on my podcast and any other podcast that you tune into. He's a survivor of infidelity. He's someone that is really a picture of what we call doing the work. I know if you've watched me for some time, you've heard myself and other colleagues like James Annear, Michael Webb, whomever that would say, you have to do the work. And today I'm just so thrilled that Bill has been willing to come in today. We have him off camera just to protect his identity. If you've watched me for a while, you know how this goes. So, Bill, I can't thank you enough for coming in, buddy.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, you are a betrayed male. Talk a little bit about your past and what went on in your early marriage.
My situation might be a bit different than others, but I discovered later on, much later on, that my spouse was a narcissist who, big surprise, my father was a narcissist, so it's just following that standard pattern. But we had this wonderful relationship when we first met. Everything synced up. It was all guy's version of a fairy tale kind of thing. And it just slowly got worse and worse. It became sexless. It became kind of bitter. And I was always trying to get back to that place where I had been. And it just never seemed to happen. And then at some point, you fast forward and we're in this for quite a while, maybe 5 years. We've got two kids, a mortgage, trying to get by financially and all this stuff. And then she admits to me that early on in our relationship, she cheated on me. And it was crushing because the entire thing felt like a trap. Like the whole thing was there as a setup and the whole thing was fake. When I think a lot of people would have a relationship like it's all real until the point where there's something happens and then it's shitty after that. But for me, it was like the whole thing seemed like a stab in the back. And from that point, the trouble with it was I was basically trapped. Financially,
Yeah.
I couldn't afford to get out. And it just, I was trying not to wreck my kids' lives and all of this stuff. And I was kind of just trapped in this relationship for quite a while longer, which was not a pleasant place to be.
Yeah. What led you to finally end the marriage?
Well, I was the only breadwinner in the family. And it was the best thing that could possibly happen to a person who has a narcissistic spouse that they're trying to get away from is that she started her own business. It took a lot of my money and time to help her get it off the ground, but then it started going. And as her income started to approach my income, suddenly she wanted to leave because
Right.
what she was worried about was that if her income's suddenly twice what mine is, she's going to owe me money when things break down. So she wanted like, let's get out of here while we can, and so I'm not going to get caught owing him cash, right?
Right.
So the actual breakup itself was very clean. It was quite a blessing, actually. And I think it only cost me $1,500, and it was like boom, boom, done.
And we've been working together for a while. You've done a lot of work, but for the listener or the viewer, having to go through a pretty difficult scenario and just have it be such a gut-wrenching experience. Where are you now? I mean, we're filming this in February of 2026. I mean, what is life like for you right now?
Oh, it's good. It's been a lot of work. And it's not done. The work isn't done. I'm in a much better place. I have a better relationship with myself, with my kids, with friends, even family. And my business is much better. Every aspect of my life has dramatically improved.
And we're going to pivot for a minute because you alluded to this, and this is going to be a real good focal point of the rest of our conversation is you were raised, and I'm not going to steal the thunder of your story, but you were raised in a massively narcissistic and abusive home to the point where I think it is really going to be hard for the listener, the viewer, to be able to grasp that. But talk a little bit about growing up on a farm with two highly narcissistic parents. I mean, it was an incredibly abusive experience, was it not?
Oh, yeah. Looking back, it's surreal because my father's like had all sorts of plastic surgery done, which is really odd for men, especially back in that time. And he always would put this really great face out to the public, but behind closed doors, it was misery living there. And being the only son was also, he took my basic existence as a threat to him. And so at any opportunity, he would punish me. He would be very random. He could be happy one minute, he could be flying into a rage the next minute. There was no safety, like there was no
Right,
security in that household. And my mother she was the enabler, just like, if you have someone who's an alcoholic, someone has to let him be an alcoholic. They have to help him, otherwise they can't function.
right.
And she would manipulate things so that he would not come after her. He would come after her kids. He would come after his pets. He would come after his employees, anyone but her. So she was playing a game. The household was kind of every man for himself. And
Yeah.
it was a really, growing up in it, you don't realize how toxic it is. But once you get out and you start to do the work, the further and further away from it you get, clearer it is. And I guess we've talked about this, but to give your listeners a sense of it, like, and this is not a teenage thing, but when I was a kid, I actually stuck a gun in my mouth contemplating suicide because it was so bad. And this is at
Right.
like 7, 8, or 9 type of time frame. That's unusual, and it speaks to what was going on there.
Absolutely. I had my bouts with suicide in my early teens and all of that, but 7, 8, or 9, looking at your environment, living in a way that feels like I am helpless and I am hopeless. And at such a young age, when our parents are supposed to be showing up for us and our parents are supposed to be creating safety, vulnerability, mirror neurons, as we talk about, and yet you are feeling so hopeless and despairing that you would even contemplate suicide at such a young age, as much as to even put a gun in your mouth. When you think back upon that, living in that environment, going through so much abuse and just despair, how do you think it affected the way you looked at life, the way you looked at marriage, the way you looked at your future? I mean, what did do to you psychologically?
It
We're
did a
we're
number
both
on me, that's for sure.
we're both laughing because we've unpacked so much together. But for those that are like, man, I resonate with that. Maybe put some verbiage to how it affected your outlook on life and how it affected the way you even saw yourself.
And I only really truly have perspective on this now, being able to look back at it, but I really was just in a survival mode. And I had no capacity to plan for the future because growing up, it was just like it was day to day survival. It was just trying to get through the day, so becoming an adult, it was just like I couldn't plan for the future. I couldn't look into the future and go, "Oh, I want to have this car or this house or this kind of girlfriend or whatever." It was just kind of like whatever kind of came along, I just had to be happy with. And happy is a bad word because that wasn't really a
Right,
piece of my life for the vast
right,
majority of my life. Yeah, and there was never any true sense of safety. I always had anxiety about stuff like, I don't know, I'm getting an audit from the government for taxes, or I have this or I have that, and these things would like just reduce me to a puddle. Like I couldn't manage them because I just couldn't see past them, and they just all sorts of things would pull up triggers from my childhood. I couldn't speak in public because, I came to realize that when I was a kid, the worst thing that could ever happen to you is that you were the center of attention, because the only time my parents put attention on me was when I was in trouble, and
Right.
that was a bad place to be.
Absolutely. So then you have this moment, let's call it, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago. You have this moment where you somehow decide you're going to take a journey of doing the work. What prompted you? We're going to unpack so much of what you did, but what prompted you to say, you know what, I need to do some work? Was it a religious experience? Was it just like a sobering up? What prompted you to go, man, I'm going to do some work?
So I'm split up with my ex. I'm kind of settled into my new life, and I'm kind of chugging along, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm gonna get back out there and just see what's what. And I start dating this girl, and everything's great. All the boxes are checked and all of this stuff. And something that manifested itself in my marriage when I found out that she was cheating on me was erectile dysfunction. And then my marriage kind of became sexless anyway, so it didn't it
Right.
didn't really matter. So I'm stuck
Yeah.
in this place, and I fast forward, the marriage is over. I'm back out on the market, and in my head I'm thinking, well, that was her and all that shit I had with her, and get into this relationship with this girl, and it's not working. This is like, oh fuck. And sorry, I don't know if I can swear on your podcast, but you could
Too
bleep it
late. You
out if
already
you
did. We're good.
want. And she was understanding. She tried to work with it and all this stuff, and basically that relationship came to an end. And I thought to myself, I need to fix myself, because I'm just going to keep hurting people around me, and I don't want to do that. So yeah, I found a therapist in online or something, locally, and I started seeing her, and then that kind of kicked off 8 years of lots of stuff.
Well, and unpack that because, I mean, you've done, I don't want to steal your thunder. You can talk about it, but you've done ayahuasca, you've done shrooms. I mean, what all have you done in the pursuit of not just the erectile dysfunction, but really going on a journey back to yourself?
I bet you I've spent over $150,000, and I've spent an inordinate amount of time. I've read at least 100 books. I've watched probably 2,000 hours of YouTube videos, and I've seen different therapists. I've um, I've done hypnotherapy. I've done acupuncture. I've gone to South America to do ayahuasca. I've done guided mushroom things specifically to deal with trauma and different things like that. I've signed up for online courses that I've done. There's somatic therapy, and there's Frankenchrist, I think it's called, Feldenkrais stuff. And I'm sure there's ones I'm missing. Like it goes
Right.
on and on. EMDR, ETT, I forget what it stands for, emotional something therapy.
Transformation therapy,
Yeah.
right?
And I don't know what you call what you do, but I've been working with you for a long time. Not a long time, but
Right.
a couple of years maybe. I've become religious in that same 8 years, and that spiritual side of things has been a big help as well. And yeah,
What you didn't mention is that somewhere along the road, somebody said, you need to do this. And if not this, then X. You had this wake up call and you decided to go on this journey. It sounds like nobody made you do it. It sounds like you said, look, I got to find out what's going on inside of me. Is that fair?
oh yeah, yeah. And it's kind of like I've got a big drive to figure this out, right? It's a big undertaking.
It really is.
And
You've
on
done,
top of all of that stuff, I actually went no contact with my family for 5 years.
wow.
So, that was a big thing, that I got rid of a lot of friends who I recognized as being toxic. Yeah, it's a real reworking of a person's life to go through this kind of journey.
I talk often in sessions with people, and I'll say this on camera, but there's this principle that says no one's coming to rescue me but the healed version of myself. Or, you know what, I'm going to rescue myself. Would you agree that going on this journey as it unfolded more and more, that you realized, hey, I'm rescuing myself. I'm not going to sit in the victim stance. I'm going to actually do the work to save myself and heal myself. Does that sound fair to you?
Oh yeah, yeah. There's different phases of that because when I first started all this stuff, I'd heard the term. I didn't even know what a narcissist was. And I remember watching a YouTube video one day and this light bulb goes off. It's like, holy fuck, that's my father. Like they were talking about my childhood and my parents, like someone had been spying on me my whole childhood and wrote this YouTube video about it. I was like,
Right,
how would they possibly know my father did exactly that? And like my first reaction to that was like, oh, I need to go take this and share it with my parents because then they'll understand and we'll fix everything, right? And
right,
it's
right.
like, yeah, thank God I didn't do that. Yeah, so there's a real awakening, and then you start to peel away some layers, and there's more layers. And I remember my very first therapy session. I'm in with my therapist, the local person I first mentioned, and we're wrapping up. And she said, "You seem disappointed." And I said to her, well, I thought we would get this fixed like
Wow.
in one session, right? And she's like, yeah, it doesn't really work that way. And it's like 8 years later and I'm still seeing her. And it's not because I think she's incompetent or I was going in the wrong direction or this or that, but it's just there were so many layers to unpack and I'm still unpacking them. To take the journey on is it can be a lot.
But you said something in a recent session that I just thought was, oh my gosh, this kind of heart, this kind of mentality is not just brave. It is obviously courageous, but it is indicative of a heart that's like, hey man, I'm on this journey. This is my journey and I love it. You said something, you go, hey, I want to talk to you about a new trigger I just discovered. So there seems to be this mentality in you that is, and I really think it's important for the audience to hear, is that there's a part of you that's like, hey, I just had a new trigger. Let's investigate that. Let's unpack that. Let's really find out what the heck's going on. That's not normal. That's something that comes from somebody who has a fearlessness that says, dude, I got work to do. I'm going to do it. What is that like for you? I mean, how did you get to that point? You didn't just wake up one day and feel that.
No, at some point in this journey, and I would assume that most people go through the same type of thing. It's not like I have all these little textbook categories, but you go through an era where you're doing discovery and you're finding things out about all these different things. But at some point, it crosses over, and maybe after several phases, I don't know, but it crosses over into a place of like these things are a gift. Like they're a message for you. This is your subconscious, your body, your spirit speaking to you. And the worst thing you could do is not listen to it. And most people, when they have a trigger of some kind, they try to run from it. It's a kind of a natural reaction. But if you can embrace these things and be curious with them and be kind to them and love them, like that's really like a core piece of healing is letting this stuff go, right? And like I can give you an example of one that happened at some point was that in my church, there'd normally be a cycle where this guy would get up who was the youth pastor and he would gather up all the nursery school kids and he'd have a little chat with them. They'd say a prayer and then they'd go off to Sunday school kind of thing. And I'd seen this happen, you know, 100 times and it's like, no big deal. And then one day he was on vacation or he was away and this woman went up and did it. And I just had such a visceral reaction to that. And I was like, what the hell's going on? I mean, then, you break it down afterwards, and it's like, here's this motherly figure being nurturing and kind and loving to these little kids. And it's like, fuck, I never got that as a kid. And here's this, like, I'm sitting there with tears in my eyes in the church. I'm like, what the hell's going on? Right. But
Right.
there's this, like, a inner child there that is screaming out for attention. Right.
Yeah.
And, the worst thing you can do is just to stuff that stuff down, because that's what I had to do all my life, was stuff these things down. And it's why I'm unpacking shit like 50 years later, right?
No, you're exactly right. And we talked about this off camera. If you knew it was going to cost you the money, the time, the sacrifice, would you do it all over again?
It's interesting because I think at the point I'm at now, I would say certainly yes. But there's times in there where, I've already spent a lot of money and a lot of time. I destroyed whatever relationship I had with my family. I've made a real mess of stuff. And I could probably say, like I still had the drive to carry on, but I looked at it at that point and I could go, yeah, I don't know. And I can, like, my sister, I remember saying to her one time, it's like, this is at some point during that discovery phase where I figured out what narcissism was and all these roles in the family and stuff. And I said, I've got some really great books you could read. I'm happy to, and she pondered it. We're on the phone and she pondered it and she said, no, no, I don't want
Mm,
to. I think she had a sense of what it would take for her to go down that path. And she was just like, no, I'll just stay where I am. And hey, if that's what a person wants to do, have at it. But if you're going to make the choice and you're going to go down the path, it's going to get ugly and you're going to get battered and bruised and it's going to hurt. There's going to be a lot of hurt people around you because you're going to have to sever relationships. You're going to have to radically modify relationships with some people, if not end them, including yourself. like,
right.
you know, and it's not an easy thing.
I talk a lot about this, and so do some other people, that recovery of this nature really involves a lot of unlearning. We have to unlearn so many things that we learned from childhood, from adolescence and teens. Would you agree for you, part of your journey has been a lot of unlearning?
Yeah, we have a lot of scripts built into us. When you get into this work, you realize that so much of your life, you're not even running the show. Like, you're an
Mm,
adult and I bought this car because I like this car. I decorated my house this way because I like this. And it's like, no, no, no. A lot of these things you don't realize that you've got these subconscious scripts going on. Why are you with this woman? Why did you pick this? Why did you go on vacation here? There's so much subconscious stuff running our lives. And when you start delving into this stuff, you start to see, well, just like I could see my parents were running this script where it's like verbatim, like the words they used, the actions they took. I could read it in a book or on a YouTube video, and it's like, how the hell did they know that? But we're all that way to some degree. So there's a lot of stuff where, and I've learned this from you, where it's you're about to do something and then you have to pause for a second and say, is this me or is this the script? What's
right.
going on here, right? And it's really the difference between being in a child mode and being in your adult self. And we have a lot of broken children inside of us that are running things. And most people are absolutely unaware. And
Yeah.
that's so maybe one of those steps, if you were to document them, was just awareness. Because once you become aware, you can't go back. Like, you can't, it's Pandora's box. Once it's open and you're kind of stuck. So you almost have to make a decision. Like my sister did, she didn't want to open the box. So it's like,
Yeah.
I'm just going to keep this closed and I'm not going to mess with it, right? But once you've
Right.
opened it, it's open. You can't put those demons back in. They're out.
Did you ever want to quit over the last, call it 8 years? Have you ever just said, nope, it's too much, I want to quit? Or have you always felt this tenacity to go, nope, I'm going to keep going. Whatever there is to unpack, I'm going to unpack it.
Speaking of scripts, like, one of the ways I survived childhood was I was just tenacious. I just had to put my head down and just keep going. And that was my
Yeah.
only option. And so through this whole process, it was just, I can't tell you how many times I've failed, how things didn't work the way I wanted them to, and the wreckage, the dollar bills that are left in my wake. And I just kept going. 8 years, that's a long time, but
Yeah.
it's trying to unravel like decades and decades of mayhem, right?
Please understand, those of you that are watching and listening, it's not 8 years because He wasn't cooperating. It's not like every one of you out there, oh my gosh, Sam, are you saying that it's going to take 8 years to heal from this? No, not from infidelity, but when you're trying to heal from narcissistic abuse, when you're and we don't have the time. If we had the time for Bill to tell some of his personal stories in childhood, it would wreak havoc upon you to see and hear what Bill has lived through. It's not your journey's going to take 8 years, but one of the things I love about you, Bill, is you've said, man, I've experienced healing. I've experienced breakthrough. So I'm not going to take my foot off the gas. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep pursuing more and more layers of healing. Is that right?
Oh yeah, 100%. I don't feel I'm finished yet. I've often said this is like an onion. It's got lots of layers and it makes you cry. So it's
Yeah.
like, and every layer you get through, you're closer to the core, which is where you're going for. So it's like, I can't tell you the number of times where I got through a big thing and I thought, that was it.
Yeah.
That was the core. I'm good now. And it's like, and then there's another layer and then another. And you keep going. And maybe the layers never end, but the thing is, every time you get through one, you get a little bit better and you get a little bit more resilient and you get tougher. And the funny thing is about this journey with, with the time and the money and all this stuff, it's like I can look at it and it's like my net worth has gone up like probably 20 times over the course
Wow.
of this journey. My annual income's probably gone up 5 times. My relationships with my kids are phenomenally better. Even after going no contact with my parents, I actually have reasonably healthy as you can be with toxic people,
Right.
relationship with them. I've got good intimate relationships. I've got, a great girlfriend, and everything in my life is going so much better. And because when you go down this path, like what happens is people who are struggling, they're never just struggling in one area. There's a whole kaleidoscope of things that they're avoiding. They buried it, they're drinking it away, they're doing whatever. And there's usually only one or two things poking up that really makes them think about listening to this podcast or going to see a therapist or doing something. But there's a whole shitload of stuff hidden under the surface that they all
Yeah.
start to get healed at the same time. And that's why it can take a long time because it's hard to know what's all there, right?
Yeah.
And usually people who are in my research and in my experience, like the people who are something happens to them in life and then they're struggling with it, it all comes back to their childhood. They focus
Yeah.
on the thing that happened to them. And I know they've even studied soldiers coming back from Afghanistan, Iraq, and it's like these guys who are really they've got the post-traumatic stress and stuff. When they look at them, they could have had a buddy that went through the exact same thing, no problems. This guy's a mess. Well, why? It's because they look into it and it was he had a messed up childhood. He doesn't have the capacity to deal with what just happened to him, the betrayal. When you're able to build yourself up and you're able to heal those inner children, other things in your life all start to get better. You get better quality friends, you have better relationships, self-sabotaging behaviors disappear, confidence is there, like you name it. It's
Yeah.
it's it's the whole package comes with it.
Wonderfully said. And you're exactly right. The tenacity within you to keep doing work and keep pressing on is just incredibly admirable. So, my last question is, if you were to talk to yourself, 8 years ago, for the man or woman who's out there going, man, I just don't know. I don't know if I want to do this work. I don't know if I want to spend the money. I don't know if I want to make the sacrifice. I don't know if I really want to go to the next level of work. What would be your message to them as someone who has survived incredible amounts of abuse, has been through massive trauma, who is a former betrayed, who has found a level of peace in life that is just pretty incredible and astounding? What would you say to the man or woman who's like, dude, I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I want to do it. What would be your own personal message to them?
You got to do it. It's everyone's journey is going to be different. You're going to be stuck with horrible regret, off into the future if you don't deal with this stuff. And I think a lot of times people just, and I would put myself in this category, is a lot of times people just don't actually have the capacity to appreciate what life can be like because they're stuck in this survival mode. They're just getting by. Lots of people get betrayed and they just get back up and off they go. And there's not like, they're pissed off and they're unhappy and they grieve it, but they can move on because they have the capacity to do that and they can build a great life. But the people who are going to be watching your podcast are a lot, I would suspect the majority of them are people who are wallowing in this and they're stuck in it. They try different things and they can't move off of it. And that's a really terrible way to live your life. But what they don't realize is that they've always been living their lives in some state of freeze or dysfunction, or there's just a real lack of joy there. And
Right.
that's really not what God intended for you. It's like there's a bigger thing out there and it's going to take time, it's going to take money, it's going to take sacrifice, and it's going to be a journey. But that's really what life is about. So the thing is, to get things that you want in life, you need to put the work in. So it's like you have to make a decision. You're either going to do the work or you're not. And if you're not going to do it, well, stop complaining. Just then you're stuck where you are.
Yeah.
That's my sister. She made that choice and good for her. Do what you want, but that's where you're going to be the rest of your life. But you know, people listening to this, I think, are people who they want to move forward. They want to get to a better place, and there is a better place, and it's not going to be easy, and there's going to be sacrifices, there's going to be blood, sweat, and tears, but it's life changing on far more levels than just the thing that they're looking at.
Excellent. Wonderfully said. For those of you that are watching and listening, on behalf of Bill and myself, I just want to encourage you to consider launching out into doing the work that maybe you've been trying to outrun, or maybe you've been trying to stuff down, or maybe you've just been terrified to unpack it. If you knew all the things that Bill had to unpack, I think you would stand in amazement. And I don't know what you have to unpack, but if you find the right people, you find the right process. So maybe it's about finding the right person to help you. Maybe it's about just being willing to have the guts and the tenacity to say, okay, because if Bill can do it and if I can do it, I promise you, you can do it. But you have to want to do it. If you need any help from me, you can reach out to me at samshealingpodcast@gmail.com. I'd love for you to like and, of course, follow or subscribe. Bill, thank you so much for coming in. It's been a wonderful picture into true tenacity and courage to be willing to not just confront yourself, but to heal yourself. So thank you for sharing just some of your story, buddy.
Hey, when you get to a certain point, you really want to pass the torch, pass it along. And yeah, I'm happy to help.
There's a meme I saw not too long ago of it said something like, my heroes are the one that come out of darkness with a torch in their hand to lead other people out of darkness. And so I thank you so much for doing that. Thank you for tuning in today. We'll see you next time on the podcast.